Hey everybody, it's Mr. Malzberger. Today we are going to learn about lines and angles. This is our unit number 5 for Math 7. To get started with, we gotta start with the wonderful circle, because everything about lines and angles are based on the circle. Most of us are familiar with spinning around being 360 degrees. If you don't know that, well, there you go. There's the magic number. 360 degrees is a full turn, a full circle. Where that number came from? Well, basically, 360 is really a fantastic number in that you can divide it in so many different ways. You can divide it in half, you get two 180s. You can divide it into quarters, and you get 4 90s. You can divide it into fifths and get 5 72 degrees. You can divide it by 6 and get 6 60 degrees. You can divide it by every single digit but 7. 7, as you maybe know, is one of the most wonky things to divide by. You can divide by 10, you can divide by 20, you can divide by 30, 45. There's so many different things you can divide it by. It's why it makes much more sense. And if you used 100, which would be mathematically far more simple, once you get to just thirds, you're at 33.3 with a never-ending decimal. 6 wouldn't work, so it just doesn't divide up evenly very well. And 360 is the most divisible number of any number before it. There's actually 24 numbers you can divide 360 by, and it may have something to do with our year being 365 days. It's really close. May have given people the idea. The lunar annual cycle is 355 days, and 360 fits right in between them. We're not exactly sure, as the Babylonians probably, or something like that. But anyways, the main thing you need to know is that 360 degrees is a complete circle. And here's where the lines come in. I'm going to take a circle and I'm going to divide it into 2 halves. Although if I was dividing a cookie in half, you would all pick that one and leave me with that one, because that was a pretty bad slice. But anyways, on each side of this line is now half of 360. A half would be 180 degrees on each side. Now, skateboarders obviously know 180 is to turn around. So it's a half circle. If you're facing this way, you turn 180 degrees, you're looking the other way. So there's 180 degrees on each side of a line. And that means if I draw a straight line without the circle, and I say, well, what are the degrees on each side? Well, you'll think to yourself, well, there's a half circle on this side, so that's 180 degrees here. It's a horrible 8. And there's also a half circle on that side, so there's 180 degrees on the bottom. This is the magic number. 180 is each side of a line. It's going to be what we're going to use for finding angles, because we're going to break up one side of a line like this. So on this side of the line, I have 180 degrees. I'm going to break it up into 2 different angles. And here's where the math problem appears. I say, well, this one right here is 130 degrees. And this one is what's left. Now we have a math problem. If you know that there is a half circle right here, and that equals 180 degrees, you know that 130 and x equals 180. Now, a lot of you in your head probably did not create an actual equation, but that's what these can make. And you do the subtraction. Most of you would have just said 180 minus 130, and you would have gotten the answer of x equals 50, because 50 plus 130 equals 180, and that's what's on one half of the line. The other side has just 180 all by itself. If I divide a line directly in half, it makes something you may have seen before, a right angle. Now, a right angle is 90 degrees. You might remember this from right triangles, which you learned in elementary school. If there's 90 degrees on this side, what's on the other side? That's right, it's 90 degrees, because 90 plus 90 equals the full 180. So there's two different types of breaks we're going to look at. We're going to break straight lines into two parts, and then we're going to take right angles and break them into two parts and find what the angles are. Now here's your vocab. The vocabulary is supplementary, angles are two angles that add up to 180 degrees. Really, I guess it could be 3 or 4 or whatever, but they all add up to 180. We're just going to deal with two. And complementary angles, as you may already have guessed, add up to 90 degrees. Now, the silly way we remember this is it's all right, right angle, to complement someone. Right angle, 90 degrees, it's all right to complement. So if you can remember that complements are the 90 degrees and supplements are the 180, those are your two vocab words, and I will have you answer questions about that later. Let's do a practice problem. I'll slide this over a little bit. We'll do practice together, and then I'll give you some to practice on your own. So we'll do one more example of one of these. Let's do 110 degrees. Now, of course, you're looking for x, the missing angle. So there's 180 here. This is what I expect you to do mathematically. I don't expect you to set up an equation because it's just this easy. Subtract and you say, okay, x equals 70. 110 plus 70 is 180. There's my half circle. I'm good. Let's do one of these. Now this is a right angle, of course, so I'm not going to total 180. I'm going to total 90. So let's break this guy up into 35 degrees and x. Now, instead of subtracting from 180, I know this is 90 degrees total, so I subtract 35 from 90, and that, of course, is going to get us 5 there and a 5 there. That's 55. I like to add up 5 to get to 40 and 50 more to get to 90, but if you would have borrowed, you would have scratched it out, made an 8, put a 10 there, but you can also use a calculator. Okay. So this is what we're looking at. You have two worksheets. I'm going to give you two. Okay. Had a little technical difficulty right there. Anyways, here is straight line angle practice. You can download this off the assignment on School Loop, or you can pause the video right now and just copy down the 6 problems. Wouldn't take you very long. I'll give you a second here to get that done, and then I'll solve each of these, and then we'll do some right angle practice. Here we go. Okay, so for number 1, I've got 131 degrees in x. I know they're going to total up to 180 degrees because there's half a circle on each side of the line. So 180 minus 131, you can do that on your calculator. I'd say 9 gets me up to 40, and 40 plus 40 gets me 80. So 49 is my answer. I hate to borrow. You should know that by now. Number 2, I have 108 and x. So there's my half circle. That's 180 degrees. This is a supplementary angle pair. I'm going to subtract 108 from here. 2 would bring me up to 110, and then 70 more would bring me to 80. So 72 degrees. I didn't put that in the first one, did I? 49 degrees. Moving down to number 3, still 180 degrees here. It's supplementary pair. got 180 minus 48. If you don't like the way I'm adding up, you can also do it. I like to subtract the tens first if I do it this way. 180 minus 40 is 140. 40 minus 8 is 32. So it's 132. Another way I like to think of subtraction. 132 degrees is the value of that angle. Number 4, here's another half circle, 180 supplementary pair. I've got 180 minus 65. I'll do that same subtraction thing. 180 minus 60, that's 18 minus 6 is 120. 120 minus 5 more is 115. So x is 115 degrees. And now I get into something a little more complicated. I don't have any angles here. I do know that this equals 180 together. And I have two x's right here and another x right there. What's 2x plus x, you say? That's right, 3x. And I know these 3 x's equal 180. So now I have a one-step equation. If I divide away this coefficient that's multiplying the x times 3, I'll get 1x, and 180 divided by 3 is 60. So that means this degree is 60. This angle is 2 times 60, which is 120 degrees. Okay, that was tricky. Looking at number 6, this gets even more complicated. I've got 2x is 100 degrees, and I know that it totals up to 180. So I have 2 x's, and then I have 100 degrees right there equals 180. Now, I probably wouldn't in my head do this. I would think, well, if I've got 100 here, I take the 100 away from 180, leaving me with 80. And then the 80 is split into 2. So that means I have 40 and 40 right here, which is what you'll get if you do the long way. Subtract that 100. See, the steps that I would do in my head are still the equation steps. I just don't write everything out, but I think of it that same way. So dividing by 2, I get x equals 40, like I said. So we've got 40 here, and we've got 40 right over here as well. Okay, angle practice. Hopefully you got those right. I'm going to give you another sheet. This is your right angle practice sheet. 6 problems. Feel free to pause the video and try all 6 of these, or you've downloaded it and printed it out off the assignment. Remember, these are right angles, so every single one of these has a total of 90. So, hopefully you're ready to go. As I said, I've got a right angle here, so these two angles add up to 90. They are complementary angles. So the long way would say I have x plus 28 equals 90, and then you would subtract the 28. Here's that subtraction thing I do again. 90 minus 20 is 70, and 70 minus 8 is 62. I don't expect you to do that unless it makes you do that, but you should understand this is what it's really doing. What I expect you to do more is this. 90 degrees, complementary angles, 90 minus 42. Same subtraction trick. 90 minus 40 is 50. 50 minus 2 is 48. So that's 48 degrees. Over here, ooh, it's a perfect split. You'll see 90 minus 45. 90 minus 40 is 50, minus 5 is 45. This is what happens when you split 90 into 2 equal parts. Split it in half. Now if you think of a whole circle here and you've got 4 90s, these are the eighths. You can divide 360 into 8 equal parts, each one being 45 degrees. Coming over here to number 4, I've got 2 angles adding up to 90 degrees. They're complementary angles. I'm going to take away that 37. Use your calculator. Borrow if you want. I'm going to take away 90 and 30, or 30 from 90, leaving me with 60. Taking away 7 more, that brings me down to 53. So 53 degrees and 37 degrees do add up to 90. Yay. Coming down to the bottom, we're getting to some equations. Same kind of concept we saw on the straight lines. I've got an x and 2 x's here, and now those add up to 3 x's. And that means I've got 90 degrees here and 3 x's there. So I'm basically dividing 90 into 3 equal parts. 9 divided by 3 is 3, so 90 divided by 3 is going to be 30. And I'm putting 1 piece here and 2 pieces there, which is 60. So 30 plus 60 is 90. I'm good to go. Moving on to this, I've now broken up 90 degrees into 3 equal parts. Well, I just did that over here, so I already recognize this should be 30, 30, 30. If I did the long way and said I have 3 x's, totaling 90 degrees, I would get this equation. The coefficient is multiplying, so I would divide both sides by 3, getting x equals 30 degrees. And of course, that's what I thought it was. 30, 30, and 30. Okay. Let me get another piece of paper here on the back of this one. And we're going to look at intersecting lines, which is just an extension of what we've already done. Let's just do a new sheet. That one looked too easy to see through. Okay, so intersecting lines. Okay, here we go. Intersecting lines are just that, like an intersection. Intersections on streets are where 2 roads cross, and this is where 2 lines cross. Now what this does is it now gives us both sides of this straight line or this straight line have been broken up into 2 separate angles. So I know this top right here has 180 degrees, as does the bottom. But this line as well right here that is diagonal has 180 degrees on both sides. Now let's say I gave you angle, the smaller one right here, let's say it's 50 degrees. Now it's subtracted from 180, oops, do that a little bit too big, and I get 130, which is what this is over here. Now if I look at this side over here as 180 as well, from here to here on this line, well, 180 minus 130 is going to obviously be 50, which is identical to this one. And then if I look at this half right here of the straight line, it's 180 split into 2. I take 50 away from 180, I get 130 again. Now what you'll notice is when you have 2 intersecting lines, you have pairs of identical angles that are across from each other. These are called vertical angles. And they are matching angles that are opposite. Not adjacent. That's a good vocabulary word as well. Vertical angles are equal and across from each other. And adjacent angles are next to each other. Okay, so this 130 and this 50, they're adjacent because they share this line right here. This 50 and this 130 are adjacent because they share that line. This 50 and that 130 are adjacent because they share that line. So adjacent are right next to each other, and then vertical angles are across. So let's do 2 little practice problems, and I'll show you a puzzle, and then I'll give you some stuff to work on. So here we go. Let's do 120 degrees here. A, B, and C. Pause it for a second. Try and fill in these missing angles. Remember what you know about here. It's a pattern. The ones across from each other are the same. You only have to do one subtraction. So pause it and get that done. Okay. You obviously know you're going to take 120 away from 180. And that leaves us, that's 18 minus 12, which is 6. So it's 60. So that means this angle right here that makes a supplementary pair is 60 degrees. Now right here and right here, these two angles are adjacent, not adjacent, they're across from each other, excuse me, these two are adjacent. Since they're across from each other and there's two intersecting lines, they are vertical angles and will be identical. So I put the 60 here, and I also see proof because 120 and 60 equal 180, and this line here has 180 degrees on that side. 120 is here and also there because of vertical angles. Here, try one more. I'll give you a little puzzle. Let's do 53 degrees. What an ugly number. All right, try that one out. Remember, one subtraction. Follow the pattern. You should already know where things are going to go. Here's A, B, and C. Get that done. Pause it. Okay, here we go. Well, I already know that 53 and C are the same because of vertical angles. So this is 53 as well. This is poorly drawn now that I look at it. I'm going to subtract 53 from 180. Now if I take 5 away from 18, that leaves me with 13, which is 130. 130 minus 3, that's 127 degrees. Wow. And this is the same because of vertical angles. Now here's this puzzle thing I was saying. I'm going to give you a fun little task. There are some of my favorite little things to draw. You draw two intersecting lines, and you know that these two are the same and these two are the same, but I'm going to mess it up by dividing this angle into a 90 degree. Right there. There's 90 degrees right there. Okay? Now I'll give you one angle, obviously. I have to give you something. So let's do 125 degrees down here. And you have to find A, B, C, and D. Now, I want you to think about what you already do know. You know you can find D and C because there's a straight line here and a straight line there. I know you can find A because I basically told you what it is. The trick is figuring out what B is, and I'll do that in a second. So give it a shot. See what you can do. Pause the video, and then we'll get it done. Okay. As I said before, C and D are the same angle, and they're both going to add up to 180 when combined with 125. So I do a single subtraction, 180 minus 125. Well, 18 minus 12 is 60, and 60 minus 5 is 55. So that means these are both 55 degrees. I know that this is a 90 degree angle because I gave the square here. And so now I look right here, I've got three angles that add up to 180. I've got 90 and 55 and B. Well, if I add 90 and 55 up together, I get 145. So if I take that 145 away from 180, 180 minus 140 is 40, minus 5 leaves me with 35. Now what you'll also notice is that 35 and 55 add up to 90. So you could either subtract 145, because I added these two up, from 180, or you could have said, well, if 90 is already here, I have 90 left over here, so you could have taken 55 away from 90 and gotten the 35 as well. Here, I'll give you one to try. And I'll give you a practice problem to try, or practice sheet, excuse me. Here we go. Line, line, and line. All right, let's give you a 90 degree angle here, and let's give you 40 degrees. That looks like fun. Okay. So here's A, B, C, and D. Pause the video, figure this out, and let's check it in a second. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Okay. I'm looking, and I know that this is 180 degrees right here. So I'm going to take 40 away from 180, and that's just going to be 18 minus 4 is 14, so 140. So I have 140 here. Now I know that these two, C and D, add up to 180. So this is my vertical angle, 40 and D. I know B is my right angle, which is 90. So now all I have to do is figure out A. Well, I know that 40 and A and 90 all equal 180. But if I take the 90 out and leave just the 90 for here, I can take 40 away from 90. And I'm left with 50. And that gives me that right there. Okay. Let me give you some intersecting lines to practice with. Okay, there's 6 problems. You can either copy this down on your paper, or you can get the file from the homework and download and print it. All right, pause that, and here we go. Okay, hopefully you've worked out all 6 of these and are going to check. I'm going to go a little bit faster because I don't want this to be the most giant video ever. I have 140 here. If I take 140 away from 180, I'm left with 40, which goes here, the vertical angle over here, and the 140 goes down here, vertical angles. Number 2, I'm going to take 70 away from 180, and I'm left with 110. So 70 goes here as a vertical angle, the 110 goes here, and there's its vertical pair. Okay, moving on to number 3, I'm going to take 115 away from 180, because that's what I'm going to do. If I take 10 away from the 80, I'm left with 70. Take away 5, I got 65. So 65 goes here. There's the vertical angle pair there. There's the vertical angle pair there. Now, of course, all this subtraction you can do on a calculator. Same basic concept. There's my 180. Going to take the 52 away. 180 minus 50 is 130. Minus 2 is 28. So that's 128 there. There's my vertical angle of 52, and the 128's vertical angle goes here. 85 now is going to be taken away from 180. That's the sloppiest 8. Now if I take 80 away from that, I'm left with 100. So I take 5 away from 100, I have 95. So 95 goes here. It's vertical pair there. And 85 down here. Number 6. Well, I know this is 3x and that is 2x, but oh, I see. I'm going to have to figure this out. This is a problem with 180, so I've got 5x equals 180. Divide by 5. And x is going to equal, I know 5 goes into 18 3 times, leaving me with 30. And 5 goes into 36 times, so it's 36. Okay, so now this is 2 times 36, which is 72. There's this vertical pair there. 3 times 36 is 90 plus 18. That's 108. Yep, these two add up to 180, so there's my vertical pair there. And that is that. All right, so here is a homework sheet for you to do. You can also download this as well. But you can also just copy it down if you want. Does it fit perfectly? Ooh, almost. Perfect. There you go. All right. Complete this any way you can and send it to me with your name on it or somehow, and I'll give you credit for doing the work on this video, and there will be more to come. Have a good rest of your day.